Desperate times call for desperate measures, and they are getting extremely desperate to crash these markets while the going is still hot for the bears. Today's video, let's look at all those times where they have tried to crash the market and look at how Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are manipulated by the news outlets. Don't go anywhere, smash up that like button, subscribe to the channel. This is your home of macro cycle analysis across cryptos, stock markets, and of course, real estate. Guys, let's dive into today's video. We're looking at these times where the market has been manipulated by news, the extreme desperate measures that are coming to us now that we are starting to see some higher lows. This video is bound to trigger those extreme bears of the market, but we're not here to worry about people's feelings. We're here to understand what the charts are telling us and how this is all blended in with the news cycles as well. So I'm going to start out with the most recent news catalyst event. We've seen Silvergate Capital, Silvergate Bank, basically come to a point where they're looking to collapse. There's been some cryptocurrency held there. People are getting very fearful of the markets. Yet, when we take a step back, just more than 24 hours, we can see that Silvergate so far has gone about 5% top to bottom, with the closing price being 4.69%. Take a look back about a month ago, just short of a month. That was some random Thursday where Bitcoin basically just broke some of the support levels, put in a low the very next day, tiny move up, another low, and then the market pushed to new highs from that point. So new recent highs, not all-time highs, of course. But now we're seeing the desperation from the media, or at least the perma bears, to manipulate the media in order to push a more negative sentiment to then try to drive the prices further down. So let's just take a step back and have a look at where we currently stand in comparison to one of the biggest news items in cryptocurrency for the last 4 years. Okay? That is the FTX collapse. This has to be one of the biggest news pieces that crypto has seen in a very long time. There will be bigger things in the future, but for now, this affected millions and millions of people. Millions of people lost money in FTX, holding it on that exchange, holding it in their term deposit type earn platform programs they had going on, and that wiped out a lot of people's savings. Now, that so far has basically put in the cycle low. We're not trying to say here and trigger all the bears and say we're never going to see lower prices, but at this stage, it seems like it's unlikely based on what we're seeing in the charts and based on the news. We're looking at this more from a subjective point of view to understand market sentiment and how that works out in a chart. Normally, we're looking at a lot of objective data, just the highs and the lows, and this is basically trying to figure out how we can read the news for what it is and then put it onto a chart. So let's stick with it and have a look at some of the other major news events that have happened over the last 2 to 5 years. Some of the most significant stuff that should have collapsed the markets entirely. So FTX was one of the most recent ones. And right now we're seeing Silvergate. You can see every news outlet try to crush the market with this event. So like we looked at in the recent video yesterday, the key areas to look out for if you are a trader or investor in these markets are key swing bottom levels. So at around these prices of 21.3 and these levels at around the mid 20,000s, provided we don't break down from those for too long, these are all just the same as every other news announcement, just the fear and the manipulation trying to get people to dump or, at even worse, just wait, continue to wait and wait and wait on the sidelines for more improving conditions. Typically, the best improved conditions are at all-time high prices. That's what we've seen in the past as well. So moving on from the FTX collapse, I have labeled many news items here that we've seen over the last 12 months. We can go all the way back. We'll go through a few of these to get an understanding of what's happened in the market and have a look at it visually from the news pieces, how emotionally driven it is and how people get very swept up in that emotion, believing we're going to see much greater downside. I'm very much referencing a crash below $15,500 here at this point. And exactly what happened on the chart. So trying to take some of the subjectivity, the art, and putting it together with the science, the facts that are labeled here on the chart, those tops and bottoms, those price points that the market has given us, basically where investors are finding support in the market or they're finding resistance. And so we can look back here, a random Thursday, a Silvergate collapse. The price of Bitcoin is still trading above the collapse of FTX. So the collapse talks had been going on a little while. There were some rumors, but this period here of early November, around that 6th, 7th, 8th of November, is really when that move got started and FTX was found out to have been insolvent and the market collapsed. The market is still in a downtrend, and as I'm filming it, it's creeping down, okay? So we're not trying to say that it's never going to see lower prices than this exact price here, and maybe tomorrow we break yesterday's low. But the point here is that even with this collapse, we continue to hold above these levels, and that bottom there being around $15,500. So we haven't even traded within that zone yet. And we now find ourselves trading within the price zone of the US equities August peak, and then that subsequent collapse that brought the US stock markets into their low so far of October 2022. So that price point is around this level right here. So we're still above those levels as well. Now, we haven't even got to some of the major pieces that came out in 2022, but if you're finding value, make sure you like and subscribe. There's a lot of hours that go into this content, and you get to support the channel. If you want to learn more about this in detail, check out the links in the top of the video description, where you'll find our free crypto and economic report, and also a TIA premium membership, where we have hundreds of hours of trading and investing, crypto educations for you guys to learn how to master these markets on your own. So going back to this next stage of the collapses, we have June 2022. Now, there's some really interesting stuff that comes up in 2021. A lot of this news that people don't even remember anymore. That's why it is so important now to understand how these news cycles work. So interest rate hike fears, that started to come through in June. We also had that earlier on as well with inflation fears in late 2021 as well. Going back to May, there was a Lunar UST collapse, somewhere around the vicinity of about 36% during that entire period. Interest rate hikes around 38%. That equities drop was about 26 to about 30%. And then the FTX collapse was also about 26%. As you can see, as the market began to turn from bearish to sideways accumulation, you can see the drops are getting less significant, less in terms of dollars and less in terms of percentage moves to the downside. However, the market sentiment, the fear and greed is still extreme. Well, at least that's the way it's seeming out there in the crypto Twitter space. Now, we have the crypto fear and greed index to let us know what people are thinking and feeling. And for today's data, it is bang on 50%, right down the middle. We're basically neutral between greed and fear. Yet, if you go on Twitter, you can see the amount of fear that is sparking over there just on this particular collapse here, even though we haven't gone any lower on any of these previous price points. This is how I read the news cycles. When you start to see bad news not affect the markets as much as what it had done in the past, there is the high probability that we are turning over from a bear to a bull through a period of what we like to look at as being a transitional period. And this is potentially that transitional period. We're now in March. This period dropped into June. So we're approximately 9 months into this transitional period. This great quote by Sun Tzu, Art of War, you guys may have heard of that, says, "In the midst of chaos, there is always opportunity." I would put this particular period down to a lot of chaos. If you think otherwise, and this is not chaos at all, let me know in the comment section down below. But this really looks like a huge period of chaos from all of these crashes, people not knowing what's going on, the fears of recession throughout the entire world, and the possibility of the real estate market collapsing, which leads me on to the next point here. Some of you may not remember the Chinese Evergrande problems that were happening in 2021. This is it on a chart. We can look back and it's essentially this little move right here. There is a lot of writing on this chart, but it's essentially this move right here before the market moved to new highs. At the time, this was seen as a massive emergency to the entire world. The news cycle, the news narrative was that the world's real estate markets were about to collapse. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because right now, no one really cares about this because China is printing billions of dollars. And this now has been part of the narrative as to why Bitcoin and some of the equities have also moved up in this period, that China is printing billions and somehow that's making it into the markets. Whereas We could go back around 18 months ago, and the fear was that China was about to collapse the entire world. So hopefully you can start to see how a lot of these narratives start to push and pull the markets in a very manipulative way. Now, trying to make sense out of the chaos and bring some more scientific reasoning to this market, bull markets ignore the bad news, and any good news is reason for further rally. So there's a quote by Michael Platt here. What we see in bull markets is that any bad news that comes our way is usually shrugged off quite quickly. Maybe you do get a little bit of a drop in the short term, and then the market continues on higher. So I've got a couple of notes here throughout the bull market of late 2020, early 2021. You can see this market dropped. It was a full 17% for the day and then closed up to be only down 3%. That was essentially just brushed off as profit taking. The source there was CNBC. If we had a 17% drop now, you can bet your life on it that there would be a ton of news around it. Going forward again, we had another move down of 27%. FCA warning, prepare to lose all your money. It was basically shrugged off a few weeks later when Elon starts to tweet, and the market continues up from that point. There are a ton of examples throughout the bull market where the bad news is brushed off, the good news continues to push the market higher. The same thing happens in reverse for a bear market. The bad news continues to push the market down. The good news can't get that market up any higher. And so there's some key characteristics of the differences between a bull and a bear market. If we take a look to what's happening now, we can see that this bad news is really starting to wear thin on the market. We can see it across the crypto fear and greed index, where we're still sitting at 50 after a potential bank collapsing that had ties to crypto. As I said here, mark my words, the same thing will happen with every news narrative in the media today. Most people won't remember half of the crap that's gone on today or the last few months. As part of our trading and investment strategies with TIA Premium, I'm going to be doing a full masterclass on how I read the news and then how I'm able to trade with the news scientifically using our swing chart. If you want to get involved in that, check out the links in the top of the video description for TIA Premium. Understanding the news cycles and how it relates to the chart has been extremely profitable for my trading and investing. We can look back to the previous cycle here of 2018 and 2019 as these markets bottomed, the fear that was brought about these lows. And it's very similar to what's happened this time around. We had the crypto bloodbath in 2018 and the fears of $1,000 Bitcoin. We're seeing the same thing now, or at least we did in November and December with fears of a $10,000 Bitcoin after the collapse of FTX. We had the same sort of thing with the COVID crash here, the black swan event, dropping the market nearly 60% in a matter of days. The same thing happened again. We're going to see sub $3,000 Bitcoin, and it never happened from that point. And so getting wrapped up into the news cycles has cost people a lot of money from not getting in at these lower prices and then waiting until things seemed far more positive. And of course, by that stage, this is the hysteria. The hysteria in the market happens at around these points between that $40,000 and $60,000 Bitcoin from what we saw in the last cycle. And this was the most risky time to get in the market, not these times. It feels and looks like the most risky time at the time, but you can see in terms of a point of view from risk and reward in your portfolios, there is far less risk to the downside and far more upside to be had. So although the market could drop from here and start to test some of these lower prices at $18,000, $20,000, maybe $22,000, the risk to the downside seems like it is shortening, especially with what the data is showing us with each of these moves to the downside becoming less and less. And the upside potential is getting greater and greater. So what do you think? Do you think this news cycle is just getting started and we're about to see lower prices past the bottom there at 15K? Remember, at the end of the day, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just using my experience in the market to determine where I think the market is going next, whether we're going to hold these lows, start to break higher, or if we're going to collapse past those lows. Let me know in the comments section. Apart from that, have a great weekend, like and subscribe. Hopefully I'll see you guys in TIA Premium. Otherwise, I'll be back here at the next video. Until then, peace out.